ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? My name is Dananu, the man with the biggest and the most blackest privilege on YouTube. And with this video here, we're going to be talking about God of War and just giving my opinions on it and things like that. This isn't going to be a review per se, so I'm not going to go beat for beat and things like that. I'm just going to give my opinions on the story itself and certain gameplay things, how the game failed in my eyes, given a couple things, and how it exceeded, my expectations and a whole lot of others. So, right out the gate, God of War. I didn't know how I was going to take this game, to be honest. I was a fan of the original games, but I wasn't like a super duper hardcore fan who loved everything about it. To me, the older God of War games, they felt like they had substance to a point, and then after, let's say about, more than, let's say like half of the game to me was just all about button mashing and not really having an in-depth story or character development or none of that stuff that make a really good story. It seems that they had a good premise starting out, with Kratos killing his family, Ares turning on him, getting the ashes put on his body, all of that good stuff, right? It seems like a good setup, and him killing all the pantheon of gods over the course of the 3 games, I like that idea. But it seems to me, at least with the original ones, I haven't played the PSP version of the game, and I think they made like 2 other side ones that weren't on main consoles, that was on handhelds. I didn't play those, so those I can't really give my opinion about. But the main 3 games I did play, and to me, they didn't really do a whole lot with Kratos. He was just, I'm an angry dude trying to kill somebody, and that's as far as his character went. It didn't wax, it didn't wane, for better or for worse. That's just what they decided to go with, and I can understand that. The original games were made for, I would say, teenagers coming into adulthood, anywhere between their adolescence, I guess I should say, and it was just known for being graphically violent and, showing titties and having sex scenes and stuff like that. So it was appealing to that kind of frame of mind. With this new one, they decided, I don't know if it's the same team that did the older ones. I don't think it is. I think this is a new team and everything like that. They decided to basically go in a whole different direction, to where I read a couple articles a couple days ago about the older games, where I guess they were looking to take God of War 4, I guess you can call it, was where it was something dealing with like the Egyptian gods and like some kind of the Kratos of Egypt, whoever that was going to be. And it was like another pantheon of gods, and it was like the guy who didn't like them, they were going to team together with Kratos and then become the 3 wise men or something like that. So I'm glad they didn't make that game, because that game probably would have been all kinds of messed up. But for whatever reason, the older studio who worked with the new ones didn't work with this new one, or at least I don't think they did. This may be the same team. Don't quote me. I didn't read that much far into it. I really didn't care. I just really focused on the game itself. So with this story here, it's about years after the first one. Kratos went to, I guess, Norway, Sweden, wherever the Norse mythology people are, somewhere up there in that icy cold. And he basically met a woman, had a kid, and this is like years later when the woman dies. Him and his son are trying to fulfill the last wishes of his girl, which was bury me on top of this mountain. And that kickstarts them into a journey involving the Norse gods, learning more about his son and himself by the end of the game, and learning even more so about his wife too, because they didn't really dive into her character a whole lot either. But the game, I would say, really doesn't do anything really particularly new. It's not going to introduce any kind of new concepts that you haven't seen in games before. It's a I guess you can call it a third-person action adventure. But what it does do great, they put the time and the effort and the money in. Every part of this game feels polished. This isn't going to be one of those games where they put out a product and you just, it looks good, but it just feels off, and you can feel that the polish isn't there. I know I feel that a lot of times with a lot of modern games. It's just, you can feel that that they put the money in and that they put the time in, but if it had a little bit more extra time, it would have been perfect, right? This game, they put the time in and they made it probably as perfect as they could possibly get it. And the combat is good. The music is damn good. The graphics are excellent. I think even with some of the fresh powder snow scenes, they're better than excellent. Some of the best I've seen, bar none. Outside of that, functionally wise, the game is perfect. I've only encountered maybe 2 glitches in the game during my whole playthrough, and I didn't rush through it. I took my time. I have an LP channel, and I did 50 parts of this game. And I basically took my time. I didn't do 100%, but I went through and I touched on every facet of the game, at least for a little bit, and then took my time with the story, explored around, things like that. And it really doesn't, like I said, I only had one glitch where I think I had to do something with the boy. Normally as you play through the game, the boy helps you out by helping you traverse the world and helping you out in combat and things like that. And there was one part in the game where you got to use his arrows. Well, I can't really one part. It's really the whole game, but you use his arrows to make bridges or to destroy things in the world so you can progress through and explore and get the areas that you couldn't get to before. And I was trying to activate one of these crystals to make a bridge to go from point A to point B, and he just wouldn't shoot it. I would hear him, I'd be hitting the button and I would hear him vocalize that he's doing it, but when I turn around, he's not behind me. He was nowhere around me. He kind of fell through the world and disappeared. It wasn't a game-breaking glitch, but it only happened in one specific area beneath the witch's house. And in order to fix that, because I thought I broke the game, and since you need him to progress, I immediately made a save game, and because just in case if I had to reload it. But luckily, you just had to get to a certain area where you have a transition, where either you're starting to climb stuff or get in the boat, that kind of sort of thing, and he just just appeared right there after that. And then I got back out of the boat and went back to the bridge that I was trying to make, and then he made it. So that was one main glitch, and I think it was something else later on in the game, but I can't remember specifically since it's been a few days since I played it. But not a whole lot of glitches. That's what I'm trying to say with this past 2 minutes here. Outside of that, I don't really have a whole lot of qualms about it, to be honest. The story is kind of predictable. They didn't, this isn't going to be one of those weird games where the story is weird and quirky, where you can't, predict what's going on and things like that. I wish it was. This pretty much follows a typical story structure. You have a beginning, middle, and an end. You have ups and downs as far as certain characters, mainly the boy. Me being an adult, I can see all that shit coming because it's just like raising kids. I don't have kids of my own, but you can see where kid characters are annoying, and that's really a big thing for me. Is I hate when characters in games or at least when children in games are super annoying and they make you walk around and stuff with them. The boy, for me, he wasn't really annoying. The only part that I would say was really getting on my nerves is where there's a huge shift in his personality. I don't want to give into, I don't want to, spoil anything with, story beats or nothing like that. But at one point in the game, the boy is pretty much, early in the game, he's nice and caring about, maybe we shouldn't kill this guy, or maybe we shouldn't do this. And then it gets to one point in the game where he learns something about who he is, and it was almost like a complete 180. Then he became mad and F you, he was entitled to, oh, why do we got to do things for these petty people? We're so much above them. He started feeling himself, right? And that was something I felt was a little bit too jarring, because to me that's when it started getting annoying. Like, he started giving you back talk in the game and running his mouth, and then as a parent you can't let that stay on YouTube. So every 5 minutes, every time he did that, I would turn around with Kratos to try to smack him, but didn't work out that way because they don't let you hit the boy. But outside of that little personality shift, because it kind of it comes about 50 or 60% through the game, and you can see it coming, right? It's one of those things where it's like, I don't want to get on here and say that it's a bad personality shift, because it's not. You see it coming a mile away. It happens, right? And then let's say the next couple missions, he's mouthy and feeling entitled and things like that. And then after one thing, after the mission after that, he immediately jumps back to how he was before. It was like, oh man, that wasn't me. I don't know what I was thinking. That shouldn't happen. I forget what mental disorder they call that, but that's a mental disorder where you jump. Is it bipolar? It could be bipolar, but bipolar is more so with emotional stuff, rage outbursts and things like that. So this wasn't really a rage outburst, but it was more like a polarity shift from one side to the other. Like, next 1 minute you're good, and then the next minute it's like, oh well, fuck them, we can kill them because we're better than them. And then the next minute after that, it's like, oh man, I don't know what I was thinking. I shouldn't have did that. I'm sorry, that wasn't me. And it really didn't have a story. I figured, because I seen it coming, right, in the LP, and I figured they were gonna do a story reason, maybe something was influencing him, or maybe this was who he really was and he was hiding it, or something. I figured that was gonna be a part of the story, right? But after he reverts back to being the way he was, it was just like how it was in the beginning of the game, for the rest of the game. Nothing changed. There was no reason for him to act that way. That's the only thing I could think of. If I think that would have been better if they'd have kept that mindset, that shift, to where, let's say, as you're progressing through the game, you Kratos are teaching the boy. So let's say as you're progressing through the game and playing it, he's learning from you. He's learning that you pretty much do whatever you want to achieve your goals. At the end of the day, given who you are and what you are, I can do whatever I want. And if you don't like me, I'll kill you. That's Kratos' mindset. That's, it is what it is. I'm gonna kill anybody who tries to stop us from doing what we gotta do. And it would have made more sense to me, story-wise, if they'd have had that shift, like the boy becoming he learned that same lesson and was like, oh yeah, fuck that, what I'm saying? I'll kill anybody who we gotta do. I'm I don't care, And then let's say through the rest of the game, Kratos sees oh man, maybe I shouldn't have been all that one way, because throughout the game he's teaching the boy, or trying to teach him, the right way to do things, the wrong way to do things, and trying to impart those life lessons to him. And by Kratos, let's say, not being a super good parent, that would influence the kid to only think about things a certain way, and to not think about the what's the word I'm looking for? The consequences to your choices and your actions and things like that. So it would have made a whole lot more sense if they'd have kept that shift throughout the whole latter half of the game, and then have Kratos have to try to deal with that, to kind of teach the boy hey, look, what I taught you was in a specific focal point, not in general, the way you should treat everybody. And maybe he had to deal with that. That was something that you have to deal with at the end of the game, or if they did a story thing where, let's say, you have Kratos be one way, but as you're playing the way through the game for the first half, certain quests or certain things you do during the quest will determine whether your son was inflicted good or had a personality shift, good or bad. Like in my game, there was a lot of things where in the beginning of the game, the boy's like, hey, look, can we help this person? Can we help that person? And Kratos is like, no, we should only focus on what we want or what we can get. And if you do, let's say, those kind of things, and let's say, or if you don't do them, I think that would have been a good way to make that shift, to make it seem like every player who plays the game, they influence the boy to be a certain way. I think that would have had a little bit more impact. But when the more dynamic choices and stuff that you put in the game, or the more things you add like that, the less of a story you you can tell specifically. Because usually in games like that, you have more choices, but it could be one of those things where by them giving you more choices, they're unable to tell the story that they specifically want to tell. They have to kind of give you a general story and then kind of let you progress through it. So maybe that's why they didn't do that. I don't know, but that was one thing story-wise that I think that was it was a real like thing that stood out, was the boy just suddenly just becoming evil for like 10 minutes and then going back to the side of the Jedi. It just seemed kind of weird to me. Outside of that, as far as the other story goes, the endgame story I felt was kind of weak. The beginning was strong, probably like 60-70% of the game was strong, and the ending kind of felt kind of weak. The middle and the ending, by the middle of the game, it was like it felt like it dragged on a little bit, and then by the end of the game, it was like I'm expecting certain things to happen. All throughout the game, you hear about Odin and Thor and how they were super dicks and how they affected everybody else. And I'm thinking like, okay, this is God of War, so we're gonna have to go through them by the end of the game, right? Like you did Zeus and the Greek pantheon of gods, right? But you didn't do that in this game. The game really kind of focused on, let's see, 1, 2, maybe 4 of the gods, I guess you can say. The Witch in the Woods, Baldur, and Magni and Modi, and like that's it. So the game, I thought that it was gonna be like, okay, you fight Baldur within the first 5 minutes. He's the one guy who fights Kratos at his house, the guy who with all the tattoos and stuff on him, right? And I'm like, okay, well, you fight him in the beginning of the game. He's the guy that's gonna introduce you to the Norse pantheon, and I thought Odin was like coming after Kratos because of who he was and what he did in the older games, right? Since he was like, since he killed off their pantheon and now he was in his realm, and he was like, well, this dude might come and take me out too, so I'm gonna try to take him out. So that's why I thought they were gonna take the story, and I thought that that Thor was gonna be that guy you fight before Odin at the end of the game, and then at the end of the game you're gonna fight Odin, and I didn't think you were gonna kill Odin, but let's say fight him and defeat him, so you can fulfill your wife's wishes and things like that, right? But that wasn't the case, YouTube. I mean, it really disappointed. I even got to I think I was like 80% of the way through my LP, and I was sitting there playing the game, and I was like, this feels like I'm getting close to the end of the game, because the missions were starting to ramp up, story-wise and things like that. It started to have more progression versus just, oh, we need this to get past this thing. And when I got to that point, I was like, oh man, it's like, I hope this isn't the end of the game, right? Even as I was playing like the last boss battle of the game, I was like, I hope this isn't the end of the game, because nothing really gets resolved with the Norse gods and all that kind of sort of stuff. Like the only part that gets resolved is probably Baldur's thing with his mom. And if you know Norse mythology, you kind of know who that is. So I mean, it's not really spoiling that, but I don't want to spoil that since it's a main story thing in the game. But you resolve his thing or his conflict with his mom, one way or the other, and that's pretty much about it. That's where like the game ends, and then you fulfill your your wife's wishes and things like that. So you never get to see Odin. You never see Thor. You never. They never dive into like, why are the Norse gods looking for Kratos and things like that. I think by the end of the game they mentioned that they weren't looking for you, they were looking for something else. I don't want to spoil that, but I wish they'd interjected like Odin and Thor into the game a little bit more. At least let you see them. Like, if you weren't gonna have them in this game, fine. Explain how they're super dicks and show them being dicks, and maybe have a fight with them, but like I said, don't kill them, and then set them up for like, oh man, we're gonna get you, Kratos, and have them come back in the sequel. I mean, because I'm assuming this game is gonna make a sequel. They put tons of money into it, and everybody seems to love the game, so I would assume they're gonna make a sequel based on it and continue the story. Or maybe they could be saving it for DLC or something like that, but I would rather have something in the game that was like, hey, look, here's Odin. This is why he's pissed at you. Or this is why he's sending his people after you. Or, something like that. Explain that. Have him be in the story somewhat. And if you want to take that somewhere else, fine, do that later. But have something in your story that tells you that. Because Odin and Thor are mentioned in this game so many times. It's ridiculous. You hear about them more than anybody else in the game. Besides Kratos. Probably Kratos and the boy will be second, them bantering back and forth. Everything else that you're hearing in the story-wise about how the world got to this point is about Odin and Thor being dicks. And it's just one of those things where it's like, I wish they'd have took that and kind of had them in the game a little bit and then branched it off into something else, or had them in this game and had you defeat them or do whatever. So that was the only other thing I could look at story-wise and be like, I think they kind of dropped the ball on that. If they weren't going to be in your game like that, then don't have them in your story that much. But outside of that, the game was on point. I mean, I can't say anything. You had a nice, colorful cast of characters. They all had interesting personalities. Nothing out of the box. Very standard personality types. You had the dwarves who made Thor's hammer. One was snarky and graphic, and the other one was like a neat freak. So they kind of paired together. Kratos and the boy kind of paired together. They were opposites. And that's pretty much it. You even meet Mimir later on in the story, and he's like a character by himself. And because he's the one explaining all of the backstory and stuff like that later on in the game. And he had a personality too, so I thought he was pretty good. I like his character a lot. But outside of that, the game was damn good. Damn good. What they've been saying for the past 2 or 3 years about, story games are, dead. Nobody's playing single player games. Nobody told this developer. Nobody told them. They were just like, well, we're just gonna do us, and if you don't like us, fuck you. Because they put out a damn good story. I have a couple gripes with it, but like I said, it's damn good. It's worth my $60. They give you tons of extra content in it too. This isn't one of those games where you just have the story and that's it. You have 2 or 3 optional areas that you can do in order to get better gear and progress the story. You have tons of side missions you can do in the open world once you get to that point. They give you tons of content, tons of things to do, tons of weapons, tons of upgrades. You could really probably play through this game maybe 3 or 4 times to fully experience everything, or unless you just take your time 100%, but then it's going to take you a while. Even the length of the game, like when I played the game, I figured this was going to be like most God of War games where it was like, maybe 8 to 20 hours anywhere in there, depending on how you play and how often you get stuck, right? That's what I thought, but this game must have took me at least like 50 or 60. It definitely had, the length to it. The ladies would appreciate this game. That's what I'm trying to say. But it was damn good otherwise. So if you guys played the game, let me know what you think of the new God of War game down below in the comments. And my name is the Nanu, the man with the biggest and the most blackest privilege on YouTube. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.